All right, this is long overdue. So here's the deal. I know I promised that I would do a podcast and I would start podcasting about my podcast idea that I had called Policy, Business, and Jolt. And the Jolt was going to be like a weekly number. This was going to be a podcast. It was different than my Lean Six Sigma podcast. As you know, I've been running a lot of podcasts around Lean Six Sigma, what it is, and how businesses can use it. And it was more around the strategic front, if you will. So let's get back into the game here. On my Facebook page, I've been posting, doing policy analytics with the help of some agents that I've actually created. I got a tremendous amount of feedback. The feedback has actually been so great that Facebook actually gave me the opportunity to convert my personal Facebook page to some sort of new plan that they have where I can boost the posts and things like that. But that's not what I was intended to do. I was getting those policy forensics and that policy analysis to understand the deep issues and what those policies were really intended to do, including, are they measurable or not, right? So the one thing I want to make sure is most people don't get blinded by policy because they disagree with it. They get blinded by policy because they never understood what it actually did. So that's what I started doing, analyzing. So as you look at my policy, the policy documents and the analysis on my Facebook page, and many of you requested that I do this, so I'm doing this. You can see it breaks it down into the so what. Here's the policy. Here's what the policy is intended to do. Here are the weaknesses in the policy. Here are, the policies, they're not measurable. Here's who's going to be get it. Here's who's affected, and here's how it affects you. So I've broken it down into the personal issue, as well as the business implications, if you will. So remember, PB&J stands for, and we'll get this up and going. Maybe we'll do it 2 or 3 times a week. Policy, business, and the Jolt. And what we're going to do is we're going to break down what a policy really means. And right now I'm focused on Vermont policy. I know some people are using my policy forensic apps to analyze bills that they're creating in other states and analyze bills in other states. This is just going to be focused right now at the Vermont level. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down what a policy means, how it affects your business and how it affects everyday people, right? And the number one thing that you should be concerned about. And if you go to the Facebook page, start looking, you can see I've done a pretty good job there. There's quite a few readers of it. There's quite a few comments on it. There's quite a few shares about the policy type forensic work that I'm doing. But that's just to understand how it's going to affect you. The second aspect of this is going to be really about understanding your business, right? And understanding what will take place there. So I'm going to separate the theater of policies and policy creation, and just really understand how it's going, what's being proposed, what does the language actually mean to you, who benefits, who pays, and what are the people missing. Now I have really detailed applications and agents that I used to do an incredible policy forensics. What I'm just sharing now are just some summaries that go in there, but I will be digging more deeply and sharing that with you. We're also going to talk about how this affects your business, right? So one of the things that to carry over from my OPEX 90 work is talking about strategy. Now, many people will talk about strategy, but this is going to be meant for the small business owner. You're the young person owning a business out there. How do I compete in the marketplace? And I'm going to work with you. We'll talk about policy every week or a couple times a week, and then we'll talk about those business implications. So what does marketing and sales look like, right? I have a deep reach into some of the most incredible marketers in the world. And some of these marketers have developed these incredible apps, and they have these products and services. I'm friends with the person that had the first $1 million sales offer on on the internet. I'm friends with another person that was the first person to write ad and copy to reach $1 billion in sales. And I have people in that technology field, right? So we're talking about marketing and sales. Of course, we're going to talk about operations, how to improve your business and how to manage that business. And then, of course, we're going to talk about how you can put these growth strategies in place. So let's talk about the strategy first. This is where people really fall down. Everyone says they know strategy, but we'll break it down for you. And I'm going to start with a formal strategy process, and we're going to break it down into small increments. The strategy documents that I produce are so large and so detailed. Unless you're a real strategist, they'll go right over your head. So we'll break this down for the small person, the small business owner, so they can understand it. Well, I'll teach you how to do what we call a pestle analysis. That stands for politics. What's the political environment you're operating in? Economy. What's the economic climate that you're operating within? Societal. What's the societal implications of where you're working? Technology. How's technology going to affect your business? What's the legal environment? And the environment, of course, we'll talk about the environment. And that's what PESTEL stands for. But we'll break it down into great detail. And when I talk about strategy, we're talking about being very specific. Where do I compete and how do I compete? So this is going to start with, we'll talk about strategy, the policies that are affecting it. We'll talk about marketing and sales, inquiry to order. Inquiry to order. I'm going to teach you some of the cool stuff that we use in big businesses. Inquiry to order. And that means, when a person makes an order, to how long it gets fulfilled. And again, it's going to be focused, actionable on you. And then I'm going to take it a step further for you. I use a technique called OGSM, which stands for objectives, goals, strategies, and measures, right? So what we want to do is once we understand the strategy, the environment we're working within, and how we can differentiate ourselves, we're going to take a look and create a plan to get there. And that plan will say, what are the objectives that we're trying to achieve? And those are just words. It could say increase web traffic, right? And then we might have a goal in there and increase web traffic by 10% as managed through Google or what other metric we want to use. And then there's a strategy. The strategy is, again, words. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then, of course, the M is going to be the metric that you use. And this is applicable all over the place. So we'll help you really create a definitive plan, structured plan to keep you focused on that prize at the end. So we'll talk about strategy. We'll talk about OGSM. We'll talk about policies, how those policies are affecting you. We'll talk about how to improve your operations. And remember, this isn't going to be strictly an operational excellence like my other podcasts, right? My other podcasts honed in really on understanding your operations, critical thinking, problem solving, analytics, and those things. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but it's going to be more tangible to you. You're not going to have to be a rocket scientist, if you will. And then, of course, as I said earlier, that front end, the marketing and sales, I have access to some of the most incredible apps, right? It will analyze all your social media accounts. It'll analyze your website, tell you the strengths and weaknesses. Once we do the pestle analysis and the strategy analysis, we'll find your competitors. How does your site stack up to your competitor? Are you unique? What's your unique differentiator there? And believe it or not, we have apps that we can use to understand in detail the psychographics. Who are your customers? You hear a lot of people talk about demographics. We're going to talk about psychographics. I wrote this incredible app last year that gets actually better, and it will break it down for you in great detail about who and how your audience should look like and how you can reach. And then we can measure and monitor that going forward. Really, really cool stuff coming forward. So that covers the policy, right? We're going to look deep dive into policy, the business implications. Now, mind you, the stuff that we talk about on the business side, if you're in politics, it can also affect you, right? What is the strategy? What is the organization? What is the environment you look like? What does the environment you're operating look like? It can do messaging, check your website. All that same stuff applies to any type of business or organization. And then Jolt will keep track of a number that you should be concerned about, right? You heard me. I'm like really concerned about the price of oil. I'm really concerned about if we lose, for God forbid, we should lose 100 soldiers in battle, right? With this Iranian things. I'm really concerned about the cost of energy and how do we manage that. So going forward, we'll keep this going. We'll do policy, business, and the morning jolt. I promise you, it's not going to be all about Lean Six Sigma and operational excellence. That's important. And then the jolt, the number you should be concerned about. I watch these numbers closely, and how are those numbers going to affect your business, right? So that is what I plan on doing going forward. And of course, when you think about the world changing around us, let's not forget AI, right? I happen to love AI. We'll be honing in on AI and the implications of AI on your business or the environment in which you're operating in, right? So, for instance, in the consulting world, I expect AI to really hit it hard, right? Because we can develop and train these AI models to do the work of your frameworks. It's really hitting the software industry hard. If you're in a service industry, what can we do to use more automation, keep our costs low, improve the accuracy of our results? If you're in the trades business, marketing, sales, we can really use AI to hone those skills there for you. So again, thanks for reaching out. I will continue to do the policy work and posting that policy work on my site. I see you doing. I see a lot of people reading it, commenting. I get a lot of messages. I get a lot of questions. I'm writing so much and I'm tracking so many things. It's near impossible for me to address everything and all the questions there. You can go ahead and say, "Hey, Dan, tag me," in the Facebook post. "Hey, Dan, can you do a deeper dive into this? What are the implications of article, this act or this bill number? How do you think it's going to affect this industry?" and so on. And remember, we're going to talk a lot about the policy, how it affects you and your family, your business, yourself. That's one thing. We're going to talk about the business implications and how to stand up a good business. I know a lot of people can't afford to hire a high-end consultant to come in. So I'll show you and break things down in little chunks that you can actually use. And of course, the jolt, right? I love numbers. We'll figure out what that morning jolt actually looks like. So keep in tune. We'll be doing more and more of these as the weeks progress. And people have asked me, but go ahead and drop your comments into the Facebook post, what it is you want me to more closely look like, right? So here in Vermont, for instance, Act 181, that's been beat up pretty good, but if there's something specific, we can write something. But there's a lot more bills. And by the way, if you notice in the Facebook posts that you're reading, that was for me to be informed when I go on the air in the morning. It was just to have that, that bit of knowledge. I've been taking the bills that have common themes and putting them together. They might be in different stages or in different committees, but it's not one bill that kills you. It's the aggregation of the bills that come from here and there. You can't see them all. And as they get stacked on top of one another, that's what really gets you and blindsides you. And that's what I've been focusing on more and more. So if you have any questions, just take a look at that. Ask me to look at these bills. And remember, everything we talk about now and what we're doing here, understanding the policies, everybody needs to be concerned with that. Politicians, business owners, nonprofits, citizens, all those policies affect you and your tax base. When you talk about business, right? We need business, right? You hear here in Vermont, although this is going to be Vermont centric, how do our businesses remain competitive in an environment where we have high taxes, low unemployment, high energy costs? And we'll navigate that. And then a jolt, a number for you to be aware of and keep track of. So that's all I'm going to have to say for now. I'm starting to script this out. And we're going to start with taking a look at some new policies. I'll do another podcast probably on Monday or Tuesday. Some new policies that are coming out. And then we'll start talking about the possible business implications. And you see those actually in those Facebook posts. And then a jolt. What number should we be looking at? Right? Or what number should we be looking for? And this is going to be universally applicable. If you're a politician, this affects to you, right? So just think about in terms of consulting, you need a political climate, the economic climate, the societal, technology, legal, environmental. But we're going to break this out into so much detail that's actionable. It should be worth your while, right? And again, we'll see what happens with this. And I'll just keep providing it. But I'm going to continue the Facebook posts. I know you get people get charged up, go ahead and try not to DM me. Put your comments in there. I can't do everything. And if there's like a large number of people interested in a particular bill or act or want it broken out a certain way, I'll do that. And remember, I'll teach you as we go through. This is going to be a fun show, right? We're going to talk about policy. We're talking about business. I love business and a morning number, some sort of number to keep an eye on. So we'll see you soon. Ciao.